The mess hall was too quiet. Usually, the great hall of the Crothar colony base was full of sound, metal trays clanging, claws scraping, deep alien voices echoing like thunder. But today, it was silent. Hundreds of massive armored aliens sat at long tables, staring at the food in front of them. Steam rose from hot meals untouched. No one moved. No one ate. Commander Tharkan, the leader of the base, stood near the doorway with his arms crossed. His dark scales shimmered under the harsh lights. His golden eyes watched the silent soldiers. It was not a silence of peace. It was the silence of worry. They still refuse? He asked quietly. Yes, Commander, said a medic, his voice nervous. Even the cubs. Especially the cubs. Tharkan's jaw tightened. The cubs were the future of their kind. If they were sick, or if they had lost their will to eat, it could mean something terrible. He slammed his clawed hand against the wall. Find the reason. They must eat. The medic lowered his head and hurried away. Outside the mess hall, a human walked down the metal corridor. Her boots echoed softly with each step. Lieutenant Mara Hayes, an engineer from Earth, carried a toolbox in her hand and a tired look on her face. She had been fixing broken systems for weeks, water lines, air filters, and now even the lights in the nursery. She didn't mind the work. It kept her busy. It also kept her away from the soldiers who stared at her like she was a strange animal. The Crothar were warriors, tall, reptilian, proud. They didn't understand humans. They respected strength and war. And Mara. She was just one small human among them, but she didn't know that today. Everything was about to change. The strange request, as Mara passed by the control room, someone called out to her. Human, wait. She turned. Commander Tharkan was there, his shadow filling the doorway. His face was unreadable, but his tone was serious. Lieutenant Hayes, he said slowly. You worked near the nursery last week, yes? She nodded, unsure why it mattered. Yes, sir. The temperature regulators were failing. He looked at her carefully. The cubs will not eat. They cry until exhaustion. The healers can do nothing. But when you were there, they were calm. Mara blinked, confused. Me? I didn't even touch them. I just fixed the vents. The commander's golden eyes narrowed. Still, they responded to you. You will come. She hesitated. Commander, I'm not trained for childcare. He didn't let her finish. You will come, he repeated, voice deep and final. And so, she followed him through the long metal corridors to the nursery dome. Her heart beating fast. The nursery. The nursery was quieter than she expected. Rows of soft glowing pods lined the walls. Inside them were small shapes. Crothar cubs, about the size of human toddlers, their scales soft and pale. Their eyes glowed faintly blue in the dim light, but the air smelled strange. The scent of uneaten food. The sound of small whimpers. The cubs lay still, refusing to eat the nutrient paste in their bowls. As Mara entered, the room changed. Dozens of tiny eyes turned toward her. Their heads lifted. The soft crying stopped. One cub, braver than the rest, crawled closer on small clawed hands. It made a tiny sound, half chirp, half hum. Mara froze. Go closer, whispered Tharkan. She took a slow step forward. Then another. The cub reached out, touching her boot with a trembling hand. Mara slowly crouched down, meeting its glowing eyes. Hey there, little one, she whispered softly. Something amazing happened. The cub chirped again, louder this time, and others began to crawl forward too. In seconds, she was surrounded by small aliens, their tiny claws gripping her uniform gently. Then, one of them picked up its bowl and began to eat. Another followed, and another. Within moments, the whole room was filled with the sounds of eating and soft, happy chirps. The medic watching from the corner gasped. They're eating. They're actually eating. Mara smiled, surprised but warmed inside. She didn't know what she had done, only that the cubs seemed happy when she was near. The rumor spreads that night. Whispers spread across the base. The cubs eat when the human sits with them. No healer could make them eat. Only her. Maybe she's using human chemicals. Maybe she's their new mother. Everywhere Mara went, she felt the stares. Some were curious. Some suspicious. Others, strangely gentle. When she entered the mess hall the next day, the noise fell silent for a moment. All eyes turned to her. Then, Tharkan gestured for her to sit. She blinked. "Commander?" "Sit," he said firmly. She obeyed, sitting at the long metal table beside him. The hall was still. The soldiers stared at their food, waiting. Then, one by one, they began to eat. Mara didn't understand what was happening, but Tharkan's eyes softened for the first time. "You bring calm," he said. "Even to warriors." The question of why later, in the research bay, 2 alien scientists studied the recordings. "She emits low-frequency sound waves when she speaks," said one. "It could be comforting to the young." "Or perhaps it is not sound," said the other quietly. "Perhaps it is. Something we do not understand. A bond." In another room, Mara sat alone, staring at the stars through the viewport. She missed Earth sometimes, the smell of rain, the sound of wind. But here, surrounded by steel and alien voices, she had found something unexpected. Tiny faces. Soft eyes. Trust. And though she didn't know it yet, that small act of sitting with them would soon make her the heart of an entire colony. A growing connection. Days turned into weeks. Every morning, Mara walked into the nursery. Every time, the cubs chirped and ran to her. They waited until she sat down. Only then would they eat. The older warriors began to visit quietly, standing at the doorway just to watch. Some brought gifts, small stones, carved pieces of metal, their way of saying thank you. Even Tharkan sometimes lingered nearby, pretending to check reports, but watching her with something like pride. Once, when she reached for a cub that stumbled, he saw the small creature press its head against her hand. He turned away quickly, hiding the emotion in his eyes, the shadow of doubt, but not everyone was pleased. High Command sent a message from orbit. The human's influence is unnatural. It risks emotional instability among troops. Cease interaction. Tharkan growled when he read it. Unnatural? He muttered. Compassion is not unnatural. Still, orders were orders. He found Mara in the nursery, laughing softly as a cub climbed onto her lap. "Lieutenant Hayes," he said carefully, "they have ordered that you reduce your visits." Her smile faded. "Reduce? But they need me. They won't eat." "I know," he said quietly, "but the order comes from above." She looked down at the cubs, their tiny eyes watching her. "Then tell them," she said softly, "that hunger doesn't follow orders." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "Perhaps," he murmured, "it is time someone reminded them of that." The storm approaches that night. The stars flickered outside the colony dome. The technicians reported a meteor storm approaching, larger than any in years. The shields were holding. For now, Mara stayed awake, watching through the window. In the distance, she could see the glow of the nursery dome, small, fragile, and full of life. She didn't know why, but her chest felt tight. A strange sense of worry crept over her. And far away, in the nursery, the cubs stirred in their sleep, whimpering softly. Ending scene. Cliffhanger. Suddenly, alarms blared through the corridors. The lights turned red. Meteor impact on the western dome. Shield failure. Mara jumped to her feet, dropping her tools. Her heart raced as she heard the words over the comms. Impact near the nursery. Without thinking, she ran. Past soldiers, past warning lights, down the long corridors shaking with explosions. The air smelled of smoke and ozone. Dust fell from the ceiling. She reached the nursery doors, alarms screaming, and saw the cracks spreading across the transparent dome. The cubs inside were crying in fear. "Mara, wait!" shouted a voice behind her. It was Tharkan. "The dome is unstable." But she didn't stop. She slammed her hand on the control panel and ran inside. The wind roared. The structure creaked. She gathered the cubs close, wrapping her body around them, whispering, it's okay, I've got you." Outside, Tharkan watched as the dome sealed behind her and the dust swallowed the lights. The alarms went silent. The air was full of smoke and dust. Emergency sirens screamed through the Krothar base. Soldiers ran in every direction. Red warning lights flashed across the metal walls. Commander Tharkan pushed through the chaos, his heavy boots shaking the floor. His chest burned with fear, a feeling he hadn't known in decades. "The human," he growled, grabbing a technician by the shoulder. "Where is Lieutenant Hayes?" The alien looked terrified. She went inside the nursery, Commander." Before the doors sealed, Tharkan froze. His eyes widened. "She did what, sir?" "She ran in before we could stop her." He turned toward the cracked dome, his jaw tightening. The thought of those tiny cubs and the human who cared for them, inside that breaking structure, made something twist inside his chest. "Open it," he ordered. "Sir, the shield is compromised." "We open it now, the whole dome could collapse." "Do it," Tharkan thundered. "Now!" The crew obeyed. Sparks flew as they forced the emergency lock open. When the doors slid apart, the sight froze everyone in place. The hero and the cubs inside the half-collapsed dome. Dust floated like mist. The temperature had dropped sharply. The lights flickered weakly. In the center of the nursery lay Mara, half covered in rubble, arms wrapped protectively around the cubs. They were alive, crying softly, pressed close against her. She was barely conscious, her lips pale, breathing shallow. Tharkan moved forward slowly, kneeling beside her. His large claws trembled as he brushed debris away. When her eyes flickered open, she whispered weakly, "They're okay. They're safe." He swallowed hard. "You are a fool," he said softly, his voice breaking. "A brave fool." She gave a small, tired smile. "Guess. I didn't follow orders again." The cubs whimpered as soldiers lifted her carefully. The smallest one refused to let go of her hand. Even Tharkan didn't have the heart to separate them. A silence across the base. Hours later, the storm ended. The damage was severe, but the base survived. Still, no one celebrated. When news spread that the human lay unconscious in the med bay, the mess hall went quiet again. No one touched their food. Even the cubs refused to eat. For the second time, silence ruled the base, but this time it was not confusion. It was grief. Tharkan stood before the great hall, staring at hundreds of soldiers who waited without eating. His claws curled against the metal floor. "They wait for her," said one medic quietly. He nodded slowly. "Then we wait too." The recovery in the medical chamber. Soft blue lights glowed around Mara's bed. Machines hummed softly. She was alive but weak. Her skin was marked with bruises and scratches, and one arm was in a support brace. The small cubs were not allowed inside, but they sat outside the transparent door, watching. Every few minutes, one of them would press its tiny claw against the glass. The alien nurses didn't understand the bond, but they didn't try to stop it either. One evening, as Tharkan visited, he saw one of the cubs crying softly outside the glass. He opened the door, ignoring the rules, and let it climb up beside her bed. The cub nuzzled her arm gently. Mara stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Hey there, little one." Tharkan looked away quickly. His throat felt tight again. "She saved you," he muttered. "And now you save her." The awakening after 3 days, Mara sat up slowly. Her body ached, but she was smiling. When she walked into the corridor, the soldiers stopped and stared. It felt like the entire base had been waiting for this moment. The cubs squeaked with joy and ran toward her. She knelt, hugging them close. For the first time since the storm, the air filled with happy sounds again. One soldier whispered, "The human lives." Another said softly, "Then we may eat again." And so, that night, the mess hall was full once more. The bond deepens weeks passed. And the story of Mara spread across the colonies. Soldiers who had never cared for humans began to bow their heads respectfully when she passed. The cubs followed her everywhere, clinging to her boots, hiding behind her legs when strangers appeared. During lunch hours, she sat with them in the mess hall. The cooks, once afraid to serve her, now saved her favorite dish, simple bread and warm soup, freshly made. She tried to keep things light, joking with the cubs and teaching them little Earth games. But sometimes, when she caught the way the soldiers watched her, with awe, with gratitude, she felt a strange weight on her heart. "I didn't do anything special," she told Tharkan once. "I just cared." He looked at her with something like respect. "Among the Krafar, caring is not small," he said. "It is strength." Orders from above, but peace never lasted long. A month later, a new transmission arrived from High Command. The message was sharp and cold. Human influence remains a distraction. Her emotional effect on military units is unacceptable. Transfer her back to Earth. Tharkan's claws dug into the console as he read it. "They would take her from us," he growled. "After all she has done." The officers around him shifted uneasily. None dared speak. That evening, he found Mara sitting by the window, watching the stars. "They are sending you home," he said quietly. She looked at him, eyes wide. "What? Why?" "They think you interfere with our discipline." She gave a small laugh, though her voice shook. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help." He nodded slowly. "I know, but sometimes help frightens those who do not understand it." Mara sighed. "When do I leave?" "Tomorrow," he said. The farewell that wasn't next morning. She stood by the shuttle bay, her small bag over her shoulder. The cubs clung to her legs, refusing to let go. "Mara, go?" One of them squeaked. She crouched down, hugging them tightly. "I'll come back," she whispered. "I promise." The cubs chirped sadly. Tharkan stood nearby, silent, watching the scene with clenched fists. Then, before she could step inside the shuttle, alarms blared again. Enemy ships detected. Orbital strike incoming. The sky outside flashed with red fire. Explosions rocked the base. The shuttle bay door sealed automatically, trapping them inside. Mara dropped her bag and ran toward the control panels. "The shields are down." Tharkan roared orders. "All soldiers to defense stations. Protect the young." Mara's fingers flew across the controls. She was an engineer. She knew the systems better than most. But the damage was severe. "I can reroute power from the south grid," she shouted. "But someone has to hold the conduit manually." "That's suicide," Tharkan barked. She met his eyes. "Then you know I'm the right one for it." Before he could stop her, she was already running. The human signaled deep in the maintenance tunnels. Sparks fell from broken wires. The floor shook under her boots. Mara reached the main conduit chamber and pulled off a heavy panel. Hot light burst from the cables. She took a deep breath and forced the wires together. Electricity surged through the walls. Outside, the shields flickered, then blazed to life, bright and strong. The enemy fire stopped short. The Krothar soldiers roared in triumph. The base was safe, for now. But in the conduit room, Mara collapsed to her knees, exhausted. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was the flickering blue lights of the cubs' nursery glowing safe again. The aftermath hours later. When the attack ended, Tharkan led a team into the tunnels. They found her sitting against the wall. Eyes closed, hands burned. But alive, when she opened her eyes and saw him, she smiled weakly. Did it work? He nodded. It worked. You saved us again. She laughed softly. Then I guess I don't need that shuttle anymore. He stared at her for a long moment, then said, No, you are not going anywhere. The oath of the mess hall that night. As the fires outside died down, the soldiers gathered in the mess hall once again. A new chair was placed in the center, smaller, human-sized. When Mara entered, still bandaged and pale, every alien warrior stood in silence. Tharkan stepped forward and said in a deep voice, From this day, no Krothar eats until the human sits with us. Her courage feeds more than our bodies, it feeds our hearts. The entire hall lowered their heads. Mara blinked, speechless, then smiled softly and took her seat. The cubs climbed onto her lap. The soldiers began to eat. And for the first time since the war began, the mess hall felt warm again. The days after the attack were quiet. The sky over the Krothar base was filled with soft golden clouds, still glowing from the fires that had burned during the battle. Repair drones floated through the air, patching holes, rebuilding walls, fixing what war had broken. Inside the base, something had changed, something that could not be repaired with tools. It was deeper. War had hardened the Krothar for centuries, but now, a strange peace had begun to grow among them, and at the center of it all was a human. A new morning Mara woke up to the sound of soft tapping on the glass. When she opened her eyes, she saw 3 Krothar cubs pressed against the med bay window, their small claws clicking impatiently. She smiled, sitting up slowly. You again? She whispered. Didn't I tell you I'm supposed to rest? The cubs chirped in response, a sound that made the nurses laugh. Commander Tharkan is waiting for you, one nurse said. He says it's important. Mara frowned. Did I break something again? The nurse smiled. Not this time, just come and see. The mess hall. When Mara entered the mess hall, she stopped in shock. The room, once gray and dull, had been cleaned and decorated. Soft banners hung from the ceiling, painted with strange alien symbols. Long tables stretched across the hall, filled with steaming food. Hundreds of Krothar soldiers stood in silence, facing her. In the center of the hall, at the main table, stood Tharkan. And beside him, a small chair, human-sized, carved carefully out of dark metal and polished until it gleamed. Her heart skipped a beat. Kun gestured toward the chair. Sit, he said softly. She hesitated. What is all this? He looked around the hall, his deep voice echoing. We eat together now, always, and this chair. He paused, his eyes meeting hers. This chair will always wait for you. The promise. As she sat down, the entire hall erupted into movement. Trays clanged, spoons scraped, voices rose. The silence that had once filled the mess hall was gone, replaced by laughter and the warm noise of life. The cubs climbed onto her lap again, nibbling their food happily. One of them dropped a piece of bread on her plate and chirped proudly. Tharkan sat beside her, his massive frame filling the space. They still follow your example, he said. Mara smiled. I didn't do much. He shook his head. You did what none of us could. You taught us to eat, not just to live. To share. She looked down at the cubs, feeling a lump in her throat. I just didn't want them to be alone. Tharkan leaned closer. And now, none of us are. The council's visit a week later, a transport ship landed on the base. It carried officials from Krothar High Command, tall, cold-eyed leaders who had once ordered her transfer back to Earth. They came expecting discipline, order, and soldiers standing in line. Instead, they found laughter echoing through the corridors and alien warriors eating side by side. With a small human woman, the council leader frowned. This is disorder, he hissed. The human weakens you. Tharkan stepped forward, towering over him. His voice rumbled like thunder. She strengthens us. The leader sneered. Explain. Tharkan turned to the soldiers. Before her, we ate in silence. We fought without purpose. We trained for victory but forgot why we should live. He gestured to Mara. She reminded us what we fight for those who sit beside us. For family. The hall murmured in agreement. Even the cubs nodded eagerly, clutching their bowls. Mara blushed. I didn't mean to start a revolution, she said softly. Tharkan looked at her. You didn't. You reminded us we still have hearts. Recognition by the end of the visit. The High Command could not deny what they saw. Reports came from across the colonies. Stories of soldiers eating together, caring for one another, and even adopting small human customs. They called it the human effect. Within months, the story of Mara Hayes spread through the stars. Soldiers across alien worlds saved a small empty seat at their tables, a symbol of compassion. They called it the chair of the human. Some said it brought luck. Others said it brought peace. But everyone agreed. It reminded them that even in war, kindness was power. The ceremony one evening, Tharkan invited her to the Grand Hall. When she arrived, thousands of soldiers stood waiting. The banners glowed softly and music played, deep, echoing notes that vibrated through the floor. At the center of the hall was the same chair. Only now it was engraved with symbols, stars, cubs, and the human's name in alien script. Mara Hayes, the one who sat with us. Tarsingle Quotes-Kun raised his voice so all could hear. We fought to survive. She taught us to live. From this day forward, no soldier, no cub, no elder shall eat alone. This is our vow. He turned to her. Will you sit with us one more time? Mara smiled, eyes bright with tears. Always. A family among stars. After the ceremony, the base changed forever. Meals were no longer cold or quiet. The mess hall became the heart of the colony, a place of warmth, laughter, and family. The cubs grew older, learning both Krothar battle songs and earth lullabies. They called her Mama Mara, even when they became tall young warriors. Whenever new soldiers arrived from far worlds, the first thing they saw was the empty chair, waiting for whoever needed a place to belong. The humans' legacy years passed. The war ended. The galaxy moved on. But the story of the human and the cubs became legend. Every Krothar ship, no matter how far from home, kept one small seat in their dining hall, perfectly human-sized. They would say before every meal, we eat together or we do not eat at all. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, on a quiet human colony, Mara sat by a window, watching the night sky. She sipped her tea, smiled softly, and whispered, I wonder if they still remember. She didn't know that on a distant planet, thousands of light years away, a new generation of Krothar cubs were sitting down to eat, and their commander was saying, Save a chair for the human. Final scene, emotional ending. The camera pans out slowly. The mess hall is full of light and laughter. At the center table, the small empty chair stands, untouched, polished, sacred. Beside it, the engraved words glow softly in the alien light. She sat with us. She fed our hearts. A soft alien lullaby echoes through the hall, the one she used to hum to the cubs. The stars outside shimmer gently, like candles in the dark, and as the music fades, one cub's voice whispers, Good night, Mara.